This now with attorney Melissa Brisman's firm. She handles cases that deal with fertility issues, parental rights, and adoption. You've never seen a case like this.
There have been embryo mix-ups before, but there has never been a case where the embryos implanted in the woman were from two different creators. So, for instance, these twins are biologically each from a different set of parents. So that mix-up is way more egregious than just implanting one set of parents, which would be bad enough.
What type of precautions should a clinic take to make sure that this doesn't happen?
Well, the FDA gives out certain guidelines, so I would imagine the FDA is probably going to come in and issue an inspection and see what's going on here. But there are a lot of precautions that are taken at IVF clinics. So, for instance, when you go in for IVF, the first thing that they normally do is they band you like when you're giving birth, and you have a set of numbers, and they read those constantly when you're in the IVF room to make sure that the egg being retrieved from you or the egg donor is put in the right tube, is fertilized in the right place, is locked and labeled. So there have been embryo mix-ups where, for instance, the couple's last names were the same, or where the catheter wasn't cleaned and an embryo was left. There was a famous New York case where that happened, where a woman gave birth to two different babies of different races. One was hers and one was...
And then what happens when, in this issue of the babies then have to be turned over to the biological parent?
Well, we don't know really what happened in this case because they're not saying that yet. The babies were turned over each to different biological parents. Now, we don't know if the couple who found out that their baby was with someone else sued to get it, or if the Asian couple said, these babies are not ours. They need to be returned to their rightful owner, and we need to institute a lawsuit because these babies are not our genetic material, and this is not what we bargained for.
As a lawyer, when you listen to a mother who had IVF, and you are a mother of three now through gestational surrogates, but when you hear the pain in her voice, and there's many people here that are in pain, what type of penalty should the clinic have to pay for their emotional distress?
Well, I don't think you really can measure that, right? You have one person who was an unwilling surrogate, and how do you measure the dollar value of being forced almost into slavery for somebody else, right? And how do you measure the dollar value of giving that up? I think that's going to be very difficult for the courts. But I think that we really need to investigate what happened here because we have no idea, right? Is it the lab's fault? Is it the doctor's fault? Did a nurse? Was there some kind of sabotage? Were these embryos frozen somewhere else and improperly labeled? Like, there's a lot of facts missing, so an investigation needs to be done before we jump to judgment to see someone's at fault, obviously, but we don't know who.
We just put up these numbers that the average cost of a single IVF cycle, a single one, is between $10,000 and $15,000. So there's a lot of investment. It's emotional, it's financial, and also this clinic is in California, but we have a couple that's about to give the press conference is in New York. So they went to great lengths to try to get to that particular clinic, and maybe they'll explain why.
Yes, and also in addition to that, they said that they spent over $100,000. So this wasn't their first attempt at IVF. So they had a transfer there before, and if out-of-pocket costs, an IVF can easily, even though they say 10 to 15, that's the national average. They went to a clinic, they did genetic screening, obviously, because they knew they were girls in advance. That's normally $6,000 each time. So they had about a $100,000 bill with their travel costs just to create these babies.
But as you said, their emotional distress is, you can't put a price on it.
Correct.
All right. Melissa, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.